Alrighty, I think we're ready to go. And just want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. Really excited to have you all here. Um, Quick introductions. I'm Quetzali Gomez. I'm the Senior Program Associate here at the Lake County Community Foundation, and I'm joined by my colleague Emily Weber, Senior Director of Programs and Community Investment. And we're super excited to um, have Alicia Wang here with us from the Center for Cyber Safety and Education, who will share a little bit more about the cybersecurity nonprofit health check. Um, with cybersecurity and IT and all the good stuff, we figured this is a good time to um, get some education and learn a bit more about what the center does and the health check program that they offer, which is free of cost to nonprofit organizations. And I will let Alicia talk a bit more about the details and how you can get signed up for that program. So thank you all so much for joining us. And Alicia, I will pass it on to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm really happy to be here today. Um, so part of what we'll be talking about today is the Cybersecurity Health Check program. It pairs cyber professionals with small businesses and nonprofits. It's an opportunity to learn more in kind of a conversational format about cybersecurity and your cybersecurity risk. And it's vendor agnostic, so it's definitely not a sales tool in any way. You'll just be learning about your business, what you can do to kind of shore up your cybersecurity. But before we get to that, I'll talk a little bit about myself, about the Center for Cyber Safety and Education. We'll talk about cybersecurity for small businesses and nonprofits, and why this is something that you should be paying attention to. And then we'll talk in a little bit more detail about the program. Um, I just talk fast. I don't know. I'm a fast talker, so I'll stop at a few points throughout this so that you can ask any questions. As you'll find out in a minute, well, I'll just tell you now, I'm not a cybersecurity professional, so I probably can't answer any of your really in-depth cybersecurity questions, but I have people that can. And that's really the point of this program. And so, just to tell you a little bit about the center and ISC2, I'll start with ISC2. They are our parent organization. It's probably not an organization you've heard of if you're not in the cybersecurity space, but they are the largest global member association for cybersecurity professionals. And they do have kind of what's considered the gold standard of cybersecurity certifications, which is the CISSP. And so they're a 501(c)(6). We're a 501(c)(3). So we are our own organization. We do a lot, while ISC2 focuses a lot on the profession of cybersecurity, we focus a lot on the pipeline of cybersecurity, workforce development, and also helping the general population get a better sense of cybersecurity, of cyber awareness, of the cyber profession. So I kind of say while they focus on the profession, we kind of get to focus on, the general population, which I think is a great opportunity for both organizations. And one of the benefits of having them as our partner or parent organization is that we utilize their members as volunteers for our programs. So with this program, the cybersecurity health check, the people who would be talking to you are cybersecurity professionals. They hold cybersecurity certifications. They've been through training, which we'll talk about later. But that's a really great opportunity. Cybersecurity professionals are very passionate about what they do. They want to give back. They want to help their communities, and this is a way for them to do that. So I'm a nonprofit professional. I've been working in the IT and cybersecurity space for quite a while now. I do hold my certified in cybersecurity certification. So I do, have some of that fundamental knowledge about cybersecurity. But we work with a lot of subject matter experts when we're building our programs, when we're looking for volunteer opportunities. So as I said before, that's kind of the beauty between our two organizations working together. So I'm fairly close. I'm in Oak Park, um, but our program is global. So we have professionals all over the world, a lot in the United States, but all over the world who help us do this work. And as we get into the program, we'll talk about this too, but we do try to pair people geographically close whenever possible, just so that they have a better idea of, the general landscape. So, as I mentioned, the Center for Cyber Safety and Education does a lot in cyber awareness. So, we have programs for youth, for senior citizens, for parents that talks about cyber safety, cyber awareness. We talk about some scams and things that are happening, um, kind of now and changing, so that people can have a little bit more awareness about that, as well as like Internet of Things and password safety and things that you've probably heard about before, but we do go into a little bit more depth about that. We have programs that talk about cyber careers. It is a varied uh, uh, profession. There's a lot of different areas of cybersecurity and a lot of different avenues to get into cybersecurity, and we want to make sure that people have a good understanding of that. We also have a scholarship program. So, both for people getting their education, so we have associate's, undergrad, and graduate degree scholarships. And then also for people who are already in the profession and looking to kind of level up. So, we have certification scholarships. Sometimes we have things for like AI workshops and things like that. So we try to make sure that people are not only getting into the profession, but that they have the opportunities to keep their knowledge up to date and continue in the profession. So I'll pause quickly and just see if anybody has any questions about the center, about the work that we do. I think I can see everyone, but if you just come off mute and ask a question too, that's fine. All right, let's get into the meat of it then. Um, so To be honest, there isn't a lot of research on small businesses and especially on small nonprofits, but Verizon actually does a pretty good report every year. So most of these statistics are pulled from their past few years of reports. Um, and I think it's a little shocking, when you look at some of the numbers. Of course, small and medium-sized businesses are a huge part of the global economy. And yet, a lot of them have experienced some sort of cyber attack. And of course, as I'm sure you can guess, that can be detrimental to a business. You think about your reputation in the community, you think about possibly lost time, downtime, etc. That can be really hard for a small business or nonprofit. Um, a lot of them kind of don't function in the same way, obviously, but have some of the same risk factors when you're looking at cybersecurity and some of the risks that they have. Also, something I don't think we think about a lot is some of these attacks are not so much to the business, but trying to gain access to something else. So you think about like an HVAC company, right? Maybe they get attacked, but it actually allows the attacker to get into another system, an organization that is working with the HVAC system, right? And so sometimes, the attacks come to smaller organizations just to gain that access to something a little bit larger. And of course, we know that, small businesses and nonprofits, I've run a small nonprofit. Cybersecurity was not something that was on my radar. Although you lack the infrastructure, you lack the knowledge, you say that's something I'll worry about tomorrow. I just don't have time. I don't know if we have the staffing. I don't know if we have the money. But we do have ways to help. And, through the cybersecurity health check program, we can make that easier for you and a little bit more digestible. I do truly believe that everyone has the ability to really look at their cyber risk and take steps to mitigate that risk. And we try to make that as easy and as time efficient and resource efficient as possible. So, this is not an exhaustive list, but just to talk about a few things that small businesses and nonprofits can see. I'm sure we've all heard of phishing, whether it's through an email where you're like, oh, I thought I paid that invoice already. Why am I getting another reminder? Or do we still have this program? The text messages we get that say we have to pay a toll or you ran a red light. I mean, you have to sign up somewhere in order to get a package delivered. There's tons of phishing attempts out there, and AI is making them look better. It's making them harder to detect. There's actually a program out right now, and I can give the team this information called Take Nine. And what they're trying to do is help you slow down and take 9 seconds before you click on anything. Because a lot of times in our day to day, we're busy. We're like, oh, that looks legit, or oh, this is someone I've heard from before. And you click the link, and then the problems can start. And so taking that 9 seconds to really look at it, to really think about it, can be the difference between you clicking something you shouldn't and deleting an email that wasn't legit. Human error, of course, weak passwords, poor cyber hygiene, those can be ways into your organization. And then insider threats. I mean, we hope this doesn't happen, but it's something that can't necessarily be discounted. So just something to think about, as you're looking at your policies and procedures. And so a couple things that are what they do when they get in. Malicious software, so malware, things that they can embed in your system to try to get data, try to get passwords, and then also ransomware. And this is something we see a lot in small businesses and nonprofits. They kind of take your data and encrypt it in a way, and you can't access it unless you pay a certain amount of money. And so, that's been detrimental to a lot of organizations, and is definitely a reason to have more rigorous cybersecurity practices. Bert, what question can I answer for you?
Yeah, I just back on the prior slide. What's the definition for small to medium-sized business, and is there a different definition whether it's a for-profit or non-for-profit?
Yeah, I honestly I can't name that off the top of my head. We usually go by the SBA's definition, which medium-sized businesses can be quite large, into the millions of dollars. So that statistic isn't just looking at kind of what, the mom and pop or the very small or the single proprietor. It is a pretty large group of organizations.
Okay, that's sort of consistent that I've seen most definitions for small to medium is really based on the number of owners versus the number of employees or size of revenue. So a small business is, if it's owned by one person, it could still be $50 million in revenue.
Yeah, the numbers we're using are more based on revenue. I believe that's how the SBA defines small and medium-sized businesses. So it's based on the revenue, not on the number of owners.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm. Any other questions? Okay. So what can you do? There are a few things that are things we should be doing in our personal life as well as in our business life. One of them is update. ISE2 luckily takes care of our cybersecurity for us. They send us messages all the time that say, "There's a new update. Please, please, please do this as soon as possible because." There's a bug that's been found, there's a vulnerability that's been found. Of course, sometimes they just want to change the way things look on your screen, but if you see an update, please do update. It is for a good reason. And that is not only for your business, but also if you have people in your business who use any of their own devices, if they're using their cell phone for business, if they're using, their own laptop or anything like that, make sure that this is something you're talking to your staff about, because it is important to the health of the entire organization. Multi-factor authentication. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. For me, I usually like to get a text message, but it's just, not only putting in your password, but also having another way to signify that this is actually you. So you can get an email, you can usually get a text message. Sometimes you have to go to a different device and click something. But this is a really good way to put an additional step in if anyone should get a password, if anyone should, get some sort of access to your system, it does just kind of put that extra layer of protection. And then another thing, and this is an area of cybersecurity, identity and access management. Who really needs access to what? And sometimes it's easier to just be like, everybody gets access to everything. But if you really sit down and think about, you know, who needs access to, say, financial systems or financial records, who needs access to personally identifiable information, you can lessen some of your risk just by having fewer hands who can touch various systems. Creating a culture. And so, I think a lot of times there's a lot of, I'll say, shame and embarrassment that can come with cybersecurity issues, right? I accidentally went to fake website. It was an organization I was looking up. I hadn't worked with them before. And there was a fake website out there in the world. And so, I didn't really know that. I didn't know which website was theirs. Probably should have taken 9 to evaluate the situation first, but clicked on something that I shouldn't have. And so I had to tell my organization that. And it was really important that I told my organization that because they needed to go in and make sure that, nothing had happened to my system. And so, in the world of cybersecurity, they're understanding, they're kind. I didn't get yelled at. I didn't have to do 18 new, procedures in order to make sure this never happened again. It was just like, all right, thank you for telling us that is the right thing to do. We will take care of this. And so I think creating that culture where people feel safe in reporting things and talking, to their colleagues, to their bosses, about things that have happened, could have happened. I mean, I know I've said to my colleagues, like, whew, I got this email, got real close to clicking it. Luckily didn't. And everyone has stories like that. And so, helping to create that culture. The next thing is training. Making sure that if you're hearing about something, like I mentioned, the toll scams, everybody was getting, overdue tolls, right? Just kind of talking about those things amongst your team, or maybe even, having someone or yourself put together a every other week, top list of like, hey, here's some interesting cybersecurity things I found. Things like that can be really helpful just to keep it a little bit more top of mind and help keep people um, informed on kind of what's out there. I mean, this is something that's really, even in the cybersecurity world, it's hard to stay on top of everything that's happening. But if we keep talking about it and, we keep kind of that training, it can really help people to just be a little bit more aware. And so the last thing is the cybersecurity health check. So I'll get into more details about that program in just a minute. But again, I'll pause just to see if anybody has any questions or comments about what we've talked about already.
A quick question. On the previous screen, you referenced making sure everyone is doing their updates. Are you referring to like the system updates on your computer?
Yeah, so updates, patches, sometimes it'll be like we're Apple, and so we'll get the system-wide, iOS updates. Sometimes it'll be Chrome. We'll put through something and it says, you need to update your web browser. Even things like your routers, making sure that your routers are updated. So yeah, all those system-wide patches and updates, you should definitely take those seriously.
Thank you.
I have a question
Yeah.
in terms of training. You did
Mhm.
mention that your company or the company that you work with also does training for the community, right? Or are these two separate um, things that we need to get?
So ISC2, our parent company, they do training, but they do training for cybersecurity certifications. So their training will be on, AI. They'll have like an AI workshop. And so that's really meant for cybersecurity professionals. The Center for Cyber Safety and Education, my organization, we do cybersecurity awareness. And so I think the training, we'd be happy to do a safe and secure online presentation for anyone's organization. But there's also, outside companies, and we use one called Ninjio, and they do like short videos and things like that. Or, we don't do anything that's like sending fake spam messages to your company. It's just more a discussion on like why you should use work email for work things and personal email for personal things, or how to prevent identity theft, or what password safety means. So a little bit more on kind of the cyber awareness. So I think the cyber awareness and the training are connected, but also kind of different topics, if that makes sense. Any other questions?
My speculation is, as we continue on, it's going to focus on like the last half of the last bullet under health check. Understand your risks and ways to mitigate them. Is that where we're probably heading?
Yep, that is.
Okay.
So, the Center for Cyber Safety and Education has a program called the Cybersecurity Health Check. And this program pairs a cyber professional with small businesses and nonprofits to go through kind of a high-level health check. And we'll talk in a few minutes about what that means a little bit more. But just to give you kind of an overview of the program, it's currently free, but we will be moving to a paid model later this year. We haven't settled on a price, but for small businesses and nonprofits, it will be affordable. We will have scholarships, sliding scale. We will make sure that this is affordable for the organizations that need it. But there will be some paid portion of this too. As I mentioned, the cybersecurity professionals are volunteers, and they're volunteers through us. So they go through training, they have to sign documents like NDAs, they have to sign a volunteer agreement. And so we talk to them a lot about the program, what the purpose of the program is, how to work with small businesses and nonprofits to make sure that your cyber professional has a good idea of your needs, and how to kind of talk about cybersecurity with you. The program should only be a couple meetings. Usually they're virtual just because that seems to work easier for everyone, but they can be in person too. If we find a volunteer in your area and you'd rather work with someone in person, we can make sure to arrange that. But usually a couple meetings for kind of the initial discussion, and then a final meeting to go over kind of the final report or the findings of the volunteer. So as I've said, the volunteers, hold an ISC2 certification. They are cybersecurity professionals. This is a global program, which also means that we have volunteers in most areas. And so we can hopefully find someone at least within the geographical area, if not within, the state, the city, etc. They sign a volunteer agreement and an NDA. Everything you talk to this volunteer about is kept within the organization. And really, they want to use their skill sets. For some of them, this is a way to get a little bit more training, to kind of up their skills a little bit, and to give back to their community. I find cybersecurity professionals to be very passionate about what they do, and they do want to keep other people safe. And so, this is something that they're doing because they care about their communities. The businesses, so we work with small businesses and nonprofits. You do not need to have an IT team. You do not need to have a cybersecurity professional. Honestly, if you have a cybersecurity professional on staff, this probably isn't the right program for you, and we can help direct you to other programs that might be more helpful. We're looking for, organizations that are really at that beginning stage. Maybe you have an IT team, but they're not cybersecurity professionals, and you just want us to have a conversation with them about um, how they can make sure the cybersecurity practices are up to snuff. Online, brick and mortar, we've had consultants, we have a business now we're working with that does outdoor planters. So, all across the board, we can take all kinds of different businesses. And the business does need to sign a collaboration agreement just because you are working with volunteers. And we want to make sure that you have an understanding of that, and that you understand what the scope of work is for this project.
If I can, a couple of
Yeah.
questions.
Hmm.
With the assumption that the business does not have a security expert or technical expert on staff,
Yep.
what are the characteristics of the people that your volunteers would be meeting with?
I mean, often it's the owner.
Okay.
It or the person. I know you had mentioned previously, it sounds like you've been assigned.
Yeah. I got,
So we
I've been pushing on this string for the last year and a half. So, anyhow, my common comment was, let's work on it. What, knowing it's important, but before it's urgent. So, uh,
yeah.
anyhow, I'm just trying to envision in my mind that if you were to have one of your volunteers show up at our doorstep,
Mhm.
who would they be meeting with that would provide the most expertise? And I think you answered that, and my assumption is it may even be more than one individual.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had organizations bring in a small team. I mean, not so big that, the purpose kind of gets lost.
Hmm.
We shouldn't be meeting with like 8 people, but maybe, two, three, four,
Hmm.
who can answer the questions and kind of make the changes needed to be made.
Understood. And I totally understand the need for an NDA,
Mhm.
before anything gets started. Um, I think I glanced at the agreements that you were referring to, and it had like a year commitment. Does it, do those kinds of commitments, would we be entering into those agreements before or after the initial 2 or 3 sessions?
There isn't a year-long agreement on the business side. Some of the volunteer language, I haven't looked at them for a little while, so I'm not remembering exactly. But a
Mhm.
lot of our volunteer agreements are for a period of time, just because, we don't want volunteers to have to sign that agreement every time they're working or doing something with us.
Mhm.
So a lot of the volunteer agreement, I think, is a 3 or 4 year agreement
Okay.
actually. But on the business side, it's not time bound.
Mm.
It's the length of time of this program.
Okay.
And so, as I said before, it shouldn't take more than 2 or 3 sessions,
Mhm.
depending on how in depth you get.
Mhm.
if you really enjoy working with your volunteer and both of you have the time and you want to ask a few more questions,
Mhm.
maybe it would go slightly longer than that, but really, we're looking at a month, a 2 month, just depending on timing, for the agreement.
Okay.
And those are things that you would sign before you begin, just because we want to make sure that, the statement of work is understood by the business,
Mhm.
and that that agreement is in place before you start working with a volunteer.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we may not be, I wouldn't want to necessarily be committing to a extended agreement
No.
before we have those initial sessions, because we may mutually agree that we don't want to work with each other, or we don't believe that there's the recommendations are actionable, whatever the reason may be.
Yeah, and to be clear, um,
Okay.
our volunteers aren't doing the work. So they're making recommendations. And so then it would be up to your organization. And, with discussions with us, you don't have to cut us out. You don't have to cut the volunteer out. But the way that the program is structured, our volunteers aren't like putting hands on keyboards. They're not fixing your systems. They're helping you get a better idea of where you stand and how you can, kind of mitigate that cyber risk. And so, most of those issues are things that you can easily take care of. They're policies, their understandings, their conversations you'll have. And then, if you do want to take the next steps, we can help you find organizations that can help you with that. But these are some of the questions, the types of questions that you would go over with your volunteer.
Mhm.
So things like, do you use computers, cell phones? Do your staff members bring their own devices? What kind of applications are you using? Do you have a hardware firewall installed? And the purpose of this is so that you can have that conversation with the cybersecurity professional. So if you're talking through this and you're like, you know, I don't know what a firewall is, you have someone there who can say, all right, let's talk through this. Let me go through this with you. Let me give you a better understanding of what this means. Because I know there's a lot of programs out there for small businesses and nonprofits, and a lot of them are checklists. A lot of them are kind of long range programs for cybersecurity. Um, 30-page PDF documents, and that can be hard to read through when you don't have the basic understanding. And
Mhm.
so this puts a person there to actually have those conversations with you and talk through, what your business needs to shore up your cybersecurity.
Thank you.
And so then, as I said, usually 1 or 2 sessions to go through the questionnaire. If you're really deep diving on things, maybe you'd need an extra session. But we've kind of designed this to be, a shorter interaction so that it is something that you can take and do in your very busy lives. And then, so the volunteer kind of amasses all of this information about your organization, things that you do, how you handle your cybersecurity, and then they put it into a kind of a final report for you. And so it goes through all of the different sections. It kind of says, what you're doing really well, where you have opportunities. This program is vendor agnostic, so you're not going to come out with a recommendation to get, a $2 million system that'll solve all of your problems. Nothing like that. We make sure that they're talking to you about the types of things that you might need. If there are systems, what kind of system are you looking for? But making sure that you're getting um, information and responses that you can actually action as an organization. And so that's something that's really important as we train our volunteers and as we talk through this program with them. And so, you can use that report as a roadmap to improve your cyber posture. We're part of a large group of organizations working in what's kind of called cyber civil defense, which is, the thought that we need to all work together to make sure our communities are safer. And so there are other organizations that take things, a step further, and we at the end of this can have discussions on, what the next steps might be for your business. Or the hope really is that this gives you an idea and a roadmap so that your organization can kind of start putting these things in place. If you need, a check-in a little bit later, that's something we can do, have the volunteer check in with you, or even if in, say, a year or 2 years, you're like, hey, I think we've made a lot of great progress. I think it's time for another health check just to see how we're doing. We're happy to go through that with you again, too. So this is just, kind of an overview. Your small business would fill out an application, which is on our website. It's pretty easy. It's not a lot of information, some information about you, some basic information about your business, mainly so that we can assign the right type of volunteer. If we have volunteers who have a lot of experience in retail sales, of course, we would want to pair them with an organization that's working in that space. We'll contact you with any questions, and then we'll introduce you to a volunteer. We do try to do that within a week. Sometimes it can take a little bit longer to find, a volunteer in your area, but we do try to keep that process as short as possible. You and the business will, or the volunteer will meet. This does follow NIST, which is the National Institute for Standards, and I never remember the T. But anyway, they have a framework on cybersecurity that most cybersecurity organizations use, and our questionnaire and our program does follow their framework as well. And so then again, the final meeting, excuse me, you'll go through the final reports and then kind of look for next steps. So that's it. So, we've talked a little bit about the center and ISC2. We've talked a little bit about cybersecurity for small businesses and nonprofits, and the program that we have that can hopefully help you get a little bit better understanding of your cybersecurity posture. So I'm more than happy to take questions. The last slide, which you'll get, does have information on our website, which is where you'd find the application, and my contact information too. But I'll actually stop sharing so that we can see each other.
I just had a quick question about this is something that I like, I'm very interested in, but I was wondering if is this a similar program or in collaboration with somehow with the security and infrastructure security agency? Or
No, we're not working with CISA on this program.
okay.
I've had a lot of conversations with CISA as we've built this program, but this is a program run by the Center for Cyber Safety and Education.
How is this different from I believe they also do security health check, and how is this one different?
I mean, I can't answer exactly how they're different because, I am somewhat familiar with their program, but I haven't, I wouldn't want to speak out of turn to their program. But my understanding with their program is it provides more kind of a report and less of the interaction. And so, you can go through assessments with CISA and they'll give you a report. And that's a little bit more technical than this program. This program talks a lot about policies, procedures, easy steps that you can take, and theirs is a little bit more technical. And we provide that discussion with the cybersecurity professional so that you can get the answers to your questions pretty immediately.
Um,
Th-
If I
Thank
may,
you.
I'm sorry, I'll leave it to whoever else is speaking. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, okay. Um, I just my what I'm hearing is that there will be these meetings that take place. I got that. And at the after the meetings, I'll call it a deliverable, would be a some kind of identification of what the exposures, cyber security exposures there may be. Identify what can or should be done. Maybe even identify when, not as far as a calendar date, but the sequence, do this first, then that, but not identify who, maybe provide suggestions. And that is the byproduct of the engagement. Am I sort of on track?
Yeah, you'll come out with kind of a report card or a final report that
Hmm.
gives you, the steps that you can take, the things that you need to do.
Okay.
And we are vendor agnostic because for a couple of reasons, right? One is a lot of our cyber professionals are also consultants, and this shouldn't be a sales opportunity for them. That is not the point of this program.
Mm-hmm.
And, it can be hard for them to know everything that's out in the market, right? And so, we don't want them pushing specific products. We don't want them pushing specific vendors or specific consultants, but they can tell you, hey, you really need a pen test, or you should work with CISA on their assessments. I think that'll give you the next step. So they can give you kind of overall steps to take without saying like you need Ladybug's greatest platform that's going to solve all of your problems and call my friend Bill, he'll hook you up, right? We want to make sure we're not doing anything like that. So that's why, we try to stay in kind of the vendor agnostic space.
Yeah, I guess I feel like that is a pro and con, which
Mhm.
is definitely I understand you wanting to be vendor agnostic. I totally get that. But if you're dealing with an organization like ours, that we may be naive as to where to go with these solutions.
Mhm.
Uh, Hopefully, there'll be some guidance as to where we may want to look.
Yeah, I mean, every interaction is different, right? And so what you're looking for might be different than what another organization is looking for. And like I said, this doesn't have to be the end of our conversations or the end of, our interactions.
Mhm.
But we might not be the right organization to help you with the next step, right?
Mhm.
We're the organization to kind of say, we've looked at what you have. These are some of the issues we see. These are some of the things you need to take care of. And then you might need to talk to another organization who can help you better with those things.
Mhm.
There are organizations that exist for nonprofits. I'm sure all of you have heard of TechSoup, that can provide discounted platforms and discounted programs.
Mhm.
There's other organizations like Aparo, who also can help, figure out a little bit more on the technical side and help make those connections to organizations that can provide the platforms. So we do have a large ecosystem in the cybersecurity space. But not every organization can do all of it, right? And so this is what our organization's doing. I see us as kind of the first step in a lot of
Mhm.
cybersecurity journeys for small businesses and nonprofits.
Yeah, I hope it's not misinterpreted that I'm suggesting anything is wrong with what you're doing. I'm just trying to make sure there's not a significant expectation gap and that what you described makes sense. And I'm
Yeah, absolutely. And, we are the right step for some organizations and we're not the right step for some organizations. And, as I said, there is kind of an ecosystem that exists out there. And so, maybe we're the first step and then we help you find the next step for you.
I have a question about eligibility. I know you did talk about it briefly, but you did mention an application. Um, where can we find that? Or you did say your website, but
Yeah, let me get some of this stuff off my screen so I can get to, um, I will put it in the chat where the application is. And, there's not a lot of eligibility or requirements, to be honest. If we start a conversation and we find out that you have a whole cybersecurity team, we're going to say we're not the right organization for you. Can we help you find someone else? But otherwise, if you're kind of starting this journey, we can definitely have that conversation with you and set you up with a volunteer who can help you figure out, where you are and where you need to go. Does anyone have any other questions?
Just assuming that we'll get a link where we could get access to this presentation um, afterwards.
Yes, we will send, Alicia will send her PowerPoint, any of the resources, and the recording as well. We're recording the webinar. Mhm.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Well, if there's no other questions, I put the link to the application. I put my email in here if anyone wants to email me directly. Please reach out with any questions. We do want to help, whether it's with us, whether, we're helping you find another organization that might be a better fit for your current needs. But I do think we're a good first step for the nonprofits, the small businesses that are just starting to look at cybersecurity. Because as I said in the beginning, I truly believe that there are steps we can all take to keep ourselves safer. And I think this program gives you a good view into what some of those could be for you.
Thank you so much, Alicia. And thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if you have any questions, we'll make sure to send our emails as well. We have some other programs coming up, if anyone else is interested as well. Yeah. Thank you all.
And stay cool today.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.